The big thing is it's not just the downstream side of things. So people are always thinking, number of businesses we go into, and everybody really, really cares about recycling, which is great. But from an impact perspective, kind of the horse has already bolted, the opportunity is gone. So we really want to get into what the full spectrum opportunity is and discuss that. And just a really quick introduction into what we do as Sustainable X. A large part of it, and James and I were just chatting beforehand, a large part of it is education as to what sustainability is. What are your environmental impacts, your social impacts, your economic impacts? And then where are you strong? Where are you weak? And moving forward from there, what's important and why. So business case for all these things, circular economy included, is really important. If you haven't got a strong reason for doing it, you're probably not going to do it well, or you're certainly not going to stick with it. So developing a business case and then a strategy and plan to choose those most significant impacts and then move them forward in a direction that's valuable to you, valuable to your customers, valuable to your people. And that nearly always involves, alas, lots of measurement, lots of KPIs, setting benchmarks, setting targets, and then making it happen. And that's what our role is. So I will stop sharing and hand over
And
to, sorry, Roddy, go on.
and just a little bit around we run a usually monthly webinar called Sustainable Xperts, where we tap into people that are really niche and really an expert in their area, and it's mostly so we learn from them but also support our clients. So yeah, we've done a series of them. We put them on our YouTube channel, a series in terms of ESG recruitment, packaging waste, carbon, DE&I, social value. There's a whole series out there, and we're always looking for other people to talk to and learn from, so that can support our client base. So yeah, if you do know anyone else, we'd love to speak to you as well on this series. But delighted to have Ricora here today, and we'd love to hand over to James or Kirsten to share a little bit about that. And then we've got some opportunity for question and answers, but we'll stop recording at that point at the end so that everybody can fully ask their questions without fear of it going widely. So over to James or Kirsten.
Thank you, Rondi. Thank you, Nick. Thanks for having us. Yes, we've got some slides to share actually. So if you don't mind, if we put those up, we'll talk through and talk about who Ricora are and what we do. So hopefully you can see that.
Yep, all good.
Good, right. So yeah, we'll get into sort of a bit more about Ricora as a company and sort of tell you about the history and the ethos behind it. But yeah, the webinar today is about the circular economy and practice, and that is what we do on a daily basis. But you know, we as a waste management company, you know, we get put in that bracket of we have trucks and we run around the city picking up rubbish from bins. And we do that. That is part of that is the bread and butter of what we do. But of course, waste management has been doing that for decades, centuries even. And there is much more to it that we need to do than that. And that is why Ricora sort of stands out from a lot of the companies in the waste management world. Can you see the next slide? Has it come up?
Not yet, no.
Not yet.
No. Strange, why has it not come up? It has on mine, you see.
Okay.
Sometimes the two screen system gets a bit.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
It's all caught up. It's gone back again.
Yeah. So yeah, what we'll cover today, we'll talk about, I mean, recycling is a lot of what we do. It's not all that we do, and we'll get into that. So we'll talk about what waste management really is, sort of from the very basics, and then we'll talk beyond that. We'll also explore systemic thinking, because it is about systems really. And then we've got some examples of circularity. I mean, I could talk to you until the cows come home about all the things that we've done in circularity with real projects and case studies, but we've got a couple that we'll share with you just to show as an example. And we can also discuss how organizations can go a lot further than simply recycling, as Nick alluded to. So let me try and see if this happens again. I'm guessing you're not seeing the next slide. No.
Yeah.
There we go. I'll do it manually.
Yeah.
But so before that, we'll talk about who Recora are. But I'll introduce Kirsten, and she can run you through a bit more about Recora.
Hello. So, Recora. What is Recora? Recora was founded in 1988 as a Friends of the Earth spin-off charity, just collecting white paper from around the law firms, mainly in London. And over the last 40 years, we have expanded into a full spectrum waste management company with 38 different recycling streams and operations throughout central London and the southeast, including flagship real estate throughout the centre. We're known for having very attentive customer service and also for our extensive data reporting. And from the beginning, with that Friends of the Earth connection, we've always differentiated ourselves on the sustainability piece. And talking about the circular economy today, we have a whole arm of the business devoted to workplace supplies from sustainable materials. So some of these workplace supplies are products that are literally made from Recora's waste, where we buy it back as premium products for our clients to purchase and therefore close the loop. And over the last kind of year and a half of internal conversations, we also decided to take all of our internal knowledge and package it up into an actual consultancy comprising of me, Ed, and James, so that we could offer more comprehensive advice to a broader range of clients than just the original client base. So some of what we're talking about today goes into the kind of new service package that falls under that new division. But yes, moving on, I think it's James is going to talk a bit about some of the circular economy projects that he's worked on to outline not just the theory, but also the actual sort of business work that goes on behind it. And so you can see that perhaps it's not quite as difficult to comprehend as you think.
Thank you, Kirsten. So yeah, let's get the basics out of the way with what waste management is. So I'm calling this Waste Management 101. We all probably have a different perception of what waste management is, but what it was originally designed to do was keep the streets clean. Lots of people used to throw out their waste out the windows into the streets, and yeah, created a real stink. So from then, the waste management industry sort of was born, and it is an infrastructure that underpins the economy. Waste will always be generated, and therefore it always needs to be collected and dealt with. In a way, we are managing the problem that our society has of overconsumption. We are the downstream end. We have to deal with whatever people throw our way. Which can be rather frustrating for us. But from a citizen's point of view, it is your primary interface with your local council. When are my bins being picked up? It's a bank holiday, what's happening? But a lot of people, when they think about where their council tax money goes, they think about their bins because it's something very, very visual. And of course, it is a public health service, and I'll get on to a couple of recent examples as to why that's quite pertinent at the moment. But how much does the UK waste every year? 215 million tons, there or thereabouts. I mean, that is, incomprehensible, really. What does that really mean? It's a lot. That's what we do know. What do we spend on waste in the UK to deal with that? Approximately £36 billion per year, which is an incredible amount, and that is over 1% of GDP. And to put that in perspective, we currently spend 2% of GDP on our defence, although yes, that is going up. We spend about 4% on education, so it's about a quarter of what we spend on education, and we spend about 10% on health. So it is a significant amount, which is far more than it probably should be. And then what about when it goes wrong? You may have all seen in the news recently the Oxford fly tipping, and that giant river that was just used for many years to fly tip. And there are many other examples around the UK like that. You probably know one in your local area. And then we've got the Birmingham bin strikes. That, you know, that is, yes, it's a labor issue, but that has created a problem in Birmingham for residents. They want their waste collected. It is not being collected. You get problems that come with that. And of course, we've probably all seen a product that we wondered why it has been designed that way, or why do I put this, which bin do I put this product into? It doesn't seem to fit into anything the council tell me. And then a system design. Perhaps your council up until recently probably hasn't collected food waste or green waste, but you produce that. So the system design isn't working. And therefore, without those product designs and system designs, you can't get true circularity. So that's where waste management needs to be better. And so I want to take you through what linear and circular systems are. I imagine many of you on this call might know what they are, but in case you don't, I've got a diagram on the next slide that I will talk you through. But really, for the waste management industry, and I've never actually liked the term waste management, because I think there's a lot of language in waste management, such as, you know, waste, throwaway, trash, garbage, that really doesn't represent what we're really doing, and it's kind of showing it as something that we need to get rid of rather than as a value and as material and resource. And there's much more positive language that we can use, and that can get people thinking differently. And to sort of put that into sort of a bit of perspective with this diagram, the linear economy, which is what the majority of our stuff, our resources go through, is we extract those resources, we make products with them, we use those products often in a single use way, and then we dispose of them. And disposing can be a number of things. For a very long time, it was landfill, putting it in a big hole. More recently, incinerating, and of course, yeah, there are other things that we do with those as well, but those are the sort of the main two. But what we really want to do is keep that value in the economy, in the system, because once you've spent a lot of energy, time, and cost bringing a resource out of the ground, you want to keep using it for as long as possible, for as long as its life will let you. And that's what the circular economy is about. So it's about designing those products and designing those systems and producing things in a way that keeps that material available after its useful life. Doesn't mean that it needs to end there. So yes, once you've consumed it, you should be able to reuse it again. If not, if it needs repairing or refurbishing, remanufacturing or repurposing, that should be able to be done with that material and that product. And at the very, very end, if there's nothing left to reuse that material, recycling should be the last resort. But often a lot of us think that recycling is sort of a very positive thing, but really it should be the worst thing that we consider. So to put that into sort of a real life example and something that we did at Recora, I wanted to tell you about a closed loop compost product. So you may have come across compostable or biodegradable packaging. There is a number of companies out there. There's a very prominent one called Vegware that we partnered with for the last 5 or 6 years. And they have a whole bunch of packaging that is compostable, industrially compostable. It's not one that you can put in the back of your garden and hope that it disappears. There's a lot of debate about about that. But these products have been designed to break down in industrial composting conditions, and therefore we had customers that wanted to compost those instead of having them go for incineration. So this was a regular question from our customers. So we explored how we could turn that into a service, and that meant quite a lot of research. You know, no one was doing this. I think there was one company doing it in Scotland. In the UK, I don't think there was many around the world that were doing this. So we needed to work out how this was going to work operationally, how it was going to work for our customers, how we could ensure that there was a limited amount of contamination, because as you can imagine, this is going back into soil and going back onto farmland, and you know, this needs to be free of plastic bottles and cans and all sorts of other contaminants that could be in there. So it's about working with the vegware to understand how their products break down. It's about testing those products with an industrial composting facility like Envar, who we partner with to this day, and then turning that into a service that customers can use and understand. And of course, that's another bin for them to get their heads around, and it means new processes for staff, people throwing that thing away, but also the cleaning teams to take that, separate it, put it into the right bin. So there's a whole bunch of training and communications that need to happen, which we had to go through that journey with our customers, with Envar, with Vegware. One thing that helped massively with that was we did a joint funding application, and we had some equipment put into our facility that enabled us to sort through the compostable packaging, because inevitably there were contaminants in there. You wouldn't believe the amount of people that chuck knives and forks into a compostable bin. Obviously, we don't want that ending up in the ground for archaeologists to find in hundreds and thousands of years. So yeah, a lot of processes, a lot of things to think about, but eventually we set up a service that did that. We set it up during the pandemic, absolute worst time to set up a new service, but hey ho, that was the timing. But we wanted to go further than that, rather than just producing soil for Envar. We wanted to provide that soil back to customers, because that's what it's about, keeping that value and bringing it back to the people that wasted it in the first place, that closed loop story. So I worked with Envar to create this product, really, where you can get a ton bag of compostable composted soil, and we sell that through our workplace supplies arm of our business. So customers can have their vegware packaging in their canteen, and right next to it they can have a planter with a nice bush in it or something, which has been fed with that packaging. So it's that great closed loop circular economy piece, and that is sort of, in a nutshell, what we're always trying to achieve here at Cora. It's not just about taking waste away and giving it its best life. It's about how we can bring that value back to our customers in sort of a meaningful way.
If I can just
So
jump in for a second.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to stress that a large part of the work of getting this product up and running was also the logistics and the retail side of things. So because we have our own retail platform, we were able to have a point of sale sort of system with the client, so that we could actually have those, you know, transactions go through easily. And then we also were able to work with the pallet network to get the compost in retail quantities, because typically compost of this type is sold for the agricultural market, and therefore sold in sort of the amounts that you would want to put on the back of a tractor. So clients with landscape gardens in central London are not looking for several tons worth of compost at a time. So it took quite a lot of collaboration with the composting company to work out what the smallest volume of compost we could sell was, so that we could then have a product applicable for this new market. So just to kind of highlight, I work on logistics quite a lot of the time, but just to highlight that sometimes these circular economy products actually come down to whether or not you can take a product that is typically used for one market in the volumes and in the supply chain that is created for that market, and seeing how you can adapt that supply chain to a new one. And that might involve looking at new forms of shipping, looking at new forms of retail, looking at new ways of marketing and selling, and also looking at new volumes of that product that can meet the quantity that they require.
Thank
Just
you,
thought,
Kirsten.
yeah, little bits about circular economy in practice. It's often just, like good business skills. It's not about learning necessarily a completely new way of thinking. It's often things you already know applied to a new problem.
Thank you, Kirsten. Yeah, absolutely. And so yes, we have plenty of solutions like that at Recora, and we're always trying to build more of them. However, that is composting and recycling, but we want to move our customers beyond that. And it sounds kind of perverse in a way that we're trying to remove the waste produced by our customers, because obviously that's what pays our bills. But we are born from an environmental charity at the end of the day. So we are environmentalists, and we are keen to help our customers reduce their waste. And there's plenty of value in reducing waste as well. And one of the ways that I'm very keen to do that is moving up the waste hierarchy towards reuse. And there are a number of a very interested customer of ours that want to, they ask the question, how can we reduce waste, James? And I said, well, you need to reuse what you've already got. And they said, oh, how do I do that? And one of the ways you can do that is taking some typical reusable, some typical single-use products and finding a reusable alternative. And there are plenty of opportunities for that. I've got a picture of Better Bankside here, and I saw Ellie was on the call. Shout out to Ellie at Better Bankside, who knows firsthand from me how passionate I am about reuse and bringing that to the city of London. But imagine if there was no such things as single-use coffee cups anymore. The billions that are produced every week and used could be a thing of the past. So that's one thing that we are actively trying to explore with our customers. And I'm going to pass you on to Kirsten, who's going to talk a bit about the examples of work that she does.
Great, thank you, James. So, yes, a lot of what we've spoken about with the waste hierarchy is looking at waste as a disposal problem, in which case the beginning of the problem is the moment when you have a piece of waste. So you've drunk your Coke can and you want to throw it away, and it is the choice selection before you in terms of what you do with this Coke can. And so, recycling or reuse or refurbishment, this is the good option. And what happens is that can gets baled with other types of cans, or your piece of paper gets baled with other pieces of paper. It gets shipped to a reprocessing facility, and then it gets turned into a second life. And that's good because it gets a second life. And the bad option is that you take your Coke can and you throw it in the general waste, and it gets shipped, if you're in London, down the river to an incinerator, which burns it. You get a bit of electricity out of that and a bit of heat out of that. It's not a lot, but there's no second life. And that's the way that we sort of think about waste as a disposal problem. Oh. Am I? Sorry, something just happened to my laptop and I thought I'd crashed. Anyway, that's how we think about waste as a disposal problem. And we never really think about the first side. But James, if you mind moving on to the next slide. Disposal is only the back end of the problem. If you want to truly understand the benefits of recycling and why it is advocated so strongly on an environmental standpoint, you have to think about the materials going into the can in the first place. By can, I mean any product. But we have to think about everything that has happened before you have purchased this product to make it, and the environmental impact of making it. So if we just go to the next slide. And the reason that we care is because that manufacturing and the extraction and the processing is often much higher in terms of its impact, often significantly higher. Aluminium is made from a metal ore called bauxite, and one of the key places where you can mine bauxite is in the Amazon rainforest, requiring deforestation and mines to be created in order to extract this metal from the earth. And that's just a picture of the bauxite mine in Brazil. So just to give you an impression of the kind of impact that makes. So if we're going to understand the life cycle impact, but here I'm just looking at carbon emissions, although there are significantly more types of environmental impact than just greenhouse gas emissions. We are going from, literally digging up a piece of metal ore out of the ground, taking that to a refinery where it gets processed into an oxide. Then you smelt that alumina into aluminium via a very high greenhouse gas emitting process, which produces perfluorocarbons, if I'm remembering correctly, which is very high global warming potential. And you have to cast that into metal ingots. And now you've got something that resembles the aluminium that you're used to. Those aluminium ingots then have to get rolled into sheeting, and then they have to be formed into whatever product that you want, into the can that you're now purchasing from your local grocery store for your lunchtime refreshment. And if we just move to the next one. And the reason that we recycle and the reason that we emphasize the waste hierarchy and the circular economy, the circularity aspect of it, is that if you start with a waste material, you avoid those highly impactful first stages of extraction, manufacture, and processing. And that avoidance is the really big part. Just move to the next slide. There we go. By avoiding those first few stages of manufacture, for aluminium, this is particularly pronounced, you avoid 94% of the carbon footprint of making a can. So a recycled can has 1/10 of the greenhouse gas emissions as a virgin can. And it's not quite, if we think of, the economy there is a certain quantity of materials that you have to continuously have flowing through the economy, like a unit of aluminium that you need for a beverage packaging. That's always going to be required. There's always going to be this demand for that material. You can fulfill that demand with waste material, or you can have to fulfill that demand with primary material and go back to the ground. Slightly different emissions profiles for different products. Plastic is about 1/3, 2/3 split. Things like glass, you're looking at about 1/4, 3/4. So it does depend quite significantly on the material. But if you look at it as a kind of broad spectrum, you get like a spreadsheet of all of the different types of avoided emissions per material, it's almost always better to use a waste product, even if the recycling process itself requires quite a significant amount of energy. If we just move on. So that is kind of part of the carbon reporting that I do. I spend a lot of time searching through scientific papers, looking for these life cycle analysis so that we can communicate effectively to clients the broad spectrum benefits of the recycling efforts that they do. They can see the impact at an economy level. And then we also do very accurate Scope 3 reporting. And those Scope 3 emissions are just from the transportation of our waste material on our vehicle. So it's a different category of emissions altogether. We went through an HVO fuel transition in February 2025, basically we decided to switch out of diesel fuel for the alternative biofuel called HVO, hydrotreated vegetable oil, which has a significant life cycle reduction in carbon emissions, and we had a very successful transition. It was really good, and this is part of the air quality and emissions advisory that I do, is also looking at people's transportation and looking at people's waste and advising on ways to get the impact down, and also looking at things like the accreditation and auditing schemes behind some of these alternative products, because it really is important that you make sure that you're getting something that's not fraudulent. There's a lot of dodgy stuff in the market. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about one of the projects that I've actually been working with Ed, which is that we've been working, hello Ed, we've been working with a client to get the emissions down in their loading bay. So they have a very restricted loading bay in terms of the airflow. It's very tall buildings on all four sides, with very little movement through, and they have a high volume of deliveries and collections, which means that whenever a vehicle goes into the loading bay and tries to turn or tries to reverse, it releases usually an emissions spike. And in that loading bay, the client has been able to set up some really sensitive monitoring technology that's able to connect any of these emissions to NOx, so that's nitrous oxide emissions and particulate matter emissions, with video footage so that they can identify the supplier responsible. And we've been working with them to analyze the data and also to track the impact of the HVO fuel that we've been using, which not only has a carbon reduction emission, but also is just a cleaner type of fuel in and of itself that has lower nitrous oxide and less particulate matter emissions too. And we have been able to measure this emissions reduction from our vehicle movements and thereby justify the additional expense of this alternative fuel, which has been really positive for, I think, everyone involved, because you can sort of look at the claims on the can, right, and you hope that they work, but when it's actually applied in practice in a real world environment, it's always a bit uncertain whether those claims are going to translate into something that you can measure in an imperfect environment. So that's some of the sort of data reporting and data monitoring work that I do too. Shall we just move through? I saw that there was a question in the chat. I haven't read. Let me just read the question.
Yeah, there is a question there, Kirsten, and I'll read it out. An important part of
Yeah.
circularity, extending recycling. So, and this remanufacturing. How do you see the role of this remanufacturing increasing in the industries you see? And we've got a few questions too. So,
Okay.
but yeah, have you got any comments on that between you, Ed, James?
So remanufacture is quite challenging. I'll start and then I'll pass over to James. It's a challenging issue because of standardization. Manufacturers want standardized sizes and materials of anything. So trying to extract the parts of a product to go back into an assembly line is really good on an emissions basis, but is really challenging when it actually comes to implementing in a commercial supply chain. I'll just pass over to James if you want to add anything there.
Well, as I sort of intimated earlier, that it's a bit of a systems problem or a products problem, or both. And if you think about, let's take our smartphones, for example, they're often designed not to last very long. They want you to buy another one, so that's planned obsolescence. But if you do have a phone and you want to replace its battery or replace a particular element of it, that's very difficult to do. Certainly, I think you can take it to the iStore and they'll charge you a small fortune for it. But often that's the case, that we've built a world where it's often cheaper to buy a brand new one rather than maintain an old one, and that's part of the problem. So I know certainly the EU government and the UK government are, looking into the right to repair, and that's a really important step, because without that we'll continue on the path of short life products. But there needs to be the skills and infrastructure to be able to remanufacture and refurbish.
I'll just jump in there. It's Ed, one of the impact consulting team. I've got a fair phone, which is a modular fair trade phone from Holland, from the Netherlands, and you can take out the battery and undertake repairs oneself. And I think that's hopefully going to push in industry and work in conjunction with that EU legislation around right to repair going forward.
James, is the presentation finished? Do you want to stop sharing and then we'll?
Yeah, I was just going to say, while we've got Ed on, we've got one more slide, because I just want to talk about the social value element, which is what Ed looks after. So we've talked about the resources and how we can manage those better. Kirsten's talked about the carbon emissions and the air pollution and energy, but sort of the third, we call it the earth, the air, and the people. It's like a set of superheroes, I think. But and Ed is that person that looks after the social value element. So I've got a slide just with one example, but Ed can talk a bit more about what he does and how it impacts what we do, and then that'll be the slides done.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually based in South Africa after being in the UK for 15 years, working in the recycling and sustainability sector. And part of my remit is to develop waste management projects with social benefits that Recora fund in South Africa. And yeah, aligning with the business ethos around transparency and environmental custodianship. Recora sponsored a youth group and took kids from very poor underprivileged areas to immerse them in nature and teach them about our impact and our interaction with nature. So that's part of it. And then in the UK also assist Recora and clients with various social value projects. And on screen, one of the examples are abandoned bicycles locked up in basements gathering dust, often some perfectly usable and sometimes quite lovely bicycles. And we've partnered with the Bike Project to rehome those, fix them up where necessary, and supply them to refugees and asylum seekers. That provides them not only with a means of a cheaper way of transportation, but also some well-being and other aspects that come along with that. And we, as a business, will release our impact report looking back to last year, 2025, and that impact reporting is also a key part of what we like to do as a team and as a business. And it's also commercially beneficial, particularly with government and UK public sector contracts where there's a social value element to contract award.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, so that's it from us. Thank you, everybody. I'll stop sharing now and we'll take some questions.
So thank you very much, everyone,
Great.
and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Take care.
Bye.